Here with the meeting. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Certainly weather is nice outside there, so thanks for joining us today. Our main topic today is going to be backing up your computer, the 2022 version, because we do this about every 3-4 years there. If you haven't already, you can mute your audio and you can turn off your video until the question and answer at the end of the presentation. You can use the chat to ask a question. I'll take a look at those after the meeting, after we get done with the formal presentation. Handouts are out on the PC Club website if you go out there, or Jim will add it to the chat in another couple of minutes just to give people time to, other people that may be a little bit late. Because if he adds it right now and they join, then they don't see that part of the chat. So he may wait a minute or two. And you can always go out to the website after the meeting to get the handouts, or if you want to revisit this video, I will be recording this. Okay, our agenda, we'll cover some club stuff and then we'll get to our main topic. Future meetings coming up this Friday. We have the MAC-SIG. They always have their questions. I haven't seen a main topic, but if you do have an iPhone or iPad or a Mac computer, worthwhile joining that, and you can attend both these. I have an iPad. I attend the meetings and look forward to some of their topics there. And then we do have our monthly now. We have a special meeting for question and answers. And our next question and answer will be June 7th, Tuesday, June 7th. And our topic next month will be June 15th. It'll be smart devices. We'll talk about all the different ones. Thermostats, locks, cameras, all the different things, some of the features, and what I've got set up in my house. This is a list of our current officers. Jim is our president, Linda is our vice president, Paul is our membership secretary, Paula is our treasurer, Chuck is our recording secretary, Mike Griffin is our MAC-SIG leader, Andrew is our communication coordinator, I'm a director at large, and we're always looking for volunteers, or if anyone wants to join the board or just attend to see what the board is like and possibly join us. We're always looking for that. And I've got a picture here from the 2019 picnic, and we'll see if maybe we can't start that back up again, or what we can do. So we'll see. Members old and new, you can pay your dues to Paul Ebert. He'll send you an email when your membership expires. Just a reminder, if you are changing your emails, like retiring from 3M, or if you were using a Xfinity or Comcast email and now you're switching to a Gmail, make sure and notify us, because that's the way we keep in touch. If you do have suggestions for topics, talk to any of the board members. We're always looking for people to present. Could be on some hardware that you bought or some software that you use. Could be something at work or at home. And if you don't want to present, we do have a monthly eBytes newsletter. And you can write a simple as a sentence or two or a long article, and we'll include it in the newsletter. Our website, I do publish, as I mentioned earlier, past meeting slides and handouts, and we usually try and record the meetings, so that's out there. We have a deals section, our eBytes, and this is the link. The link is also sent in all the emails that we send out. Okay, let's get to our main topic, which is backing up your computer, the 2022 version here. Everybody loses data at some point in their lives. So losing data is inevitable. How we recover from that loss of data, that's what we can affect. Today we'll focus on mainly the desktop and the laptop backup, but we'll also talk about some tips and some considerations about your phone and tablet also. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose data, it's only a matter of when. And since we don't know when, we just have to prepare for it. The more data you create, So the more documents, the more photos, the more videos, the more music, things that you create, the better your backup plan needs to be. Backup does take planning and effort, but today we have lots of tools and services to help. So let's talk about some of the reasons to back up. Well, unfortunately, bad things happen. And probably the number one reason for losing either a file or a part of a file or having a problem there is user error. So we accidentally delete things, we rename it, we move it to another drive, we do it to ourselves. So you want to make sure that the stuff is backed up. The second most popular problem or bad thing to happen is software bugs. None of the software that we use, whether it's the operating systems or software like Excel and Word and any package to create stuff, none of them are foolproof. And frequently, well, not frequently, but they can damage files, they can destroy files, so we do want to make sure things are backed up. Another reason is hardware failure. So in addition to the software having a problem, you may have just updated a document and you're saving it on your desktop, and the power goes out or something fails on it and the hard disk crashes. So bad things happen. Theft is another one. Flood and fire. So these are things that we have no control over, but the thing that we do control is if these things happen, what can we do to recover from that? And another one is virus and ransomware. And this is kind of listed at the end because it's the rare occurrence. Certainly some of these ransomware attacks and things like that happen more frequently to businesses and cities because they can extort more money. But it does happen to individuals where their machine is taken over, the data on there is encrypted, and unless you pay maybe $700 or several $100s, you won't get your data back. But if you've got your data backed up, you could restore your computer, you could copy the data back, and you wouldn't have to pay the ransom there. And there are other reasons bad things happen too, but those are the main ones. If you claim that you've never lost a vital file, you're lying, because if you've used a computer for even a week or 2 weeks, chances are you've regretted deleting something or losing a file, not finding it, things like that. And so you want to prepare. I mentioned here that laptops are particularly vulnerable because they're portable, they can be stolen, because they're all the components are crammed into the small space. You have more hardware fails, so they are more vulnerable than desktops in general. Let's talk about some more reasons to back up. So we talked about the bad reasons. There also are good reasons to back up. One of the good reasons is to create archives. So as you start taking more and more photos and videos and music, you want to have archives of the data that you can get at. So having an archive of that can be very important there. Another good reason to back up is to share sync data, and that can be between devices. So maybe you're moving data from one device, or you buy a new device and you're getting things set up. Or it can be people that you're sharing photos with or documents with, things like that. And if you're currently working, maybe you're bringing stuff back and forth between work and home. So sharing and syncing can be very important there. And this is probably the biggest reason, good reason, is peace of mind. If you do have a plan and you are backing up, that's going to give you peace of mind in case something bad happens there. that you will be able to get back your data. If you don't back it up, that's the worst. You're going to have anxiety about maybe losing a file or not being able to see some old pictures maybe that you took or things like that. So peace of mind is very, very important. Next we'll talk about in backup, it's called the backup rule of 3, or sometimes called the 3-2-1 rule. This is a rule that says you should have at least 3 copies. You should have your original, you should have a backup of the original, and you should have a backup of the backup. So that's what you want to make sure when you're creating these backups and you're storing files and that you have at least 3 copies. The second part of that rule is at least 2 of these copies should be on different devices or web services. So if you backed up everything to the same device and there was a hardware problem or somebody stole your external drive or something like that, you don't want to have all your backups on one device. And nowadays that can be a device or it could be a web service. So we'll be talking about cloud services and that to do backups. And so whether it's cloud services or other devices, you want to make sure that you use 2 different types of media out there. And the one part of this is at least one of the backups should be at an off-site safe location. That's just in case a catastrophe like a fire or somebody breaks in and steals all the stuff next to your computer. You want to have stuff at a different location so that you are protected. Okay, what should you back up? Well, I recommend only backing up personal data that is irreplaceable and can't be easily recreated. So, and we'll talk a little bit later about the different types of backups, but there's no need to back up your entire computer because most of the files that are on your computer are from the operating system or software or temporary things that are out there. So that stuff doesn't have to be backed up. But certainly the data that you create, you have to evaluate. Now, if you created data that you're never going to use again, that data probably doesn't have to be backed up. It's that irreplaceable data or data that can't be recreated easily. So don't be a data hoarder. I know people that have never deleted anything, whether it's their email or files that they've created in Word or stuff like that. There's no need to keep every file that you've ever created. Only keep the stuff that is irreplaceable and can't be recreated. Be very selective of the data that you back up, because the more data you have, the harder it is to find things, the longer it takes to back up. You just don't need that headache. So delete old unused data, delete directories, delete software, and then just a little tip, if you're not sure how many files are out there in a particular folder, if you're in File Manager, you can right mouse click on the folder and then click Properties, and it'll tell you how many files are out there and the size of all those files. So that can be a quick check. But bottom line of this point is back up the stuff that you really need, get rid of the stuff that you don't need. The stuff usually that you want to keep are things like financial data, scanned documents. So frequently if I get a paper copy of something, I don't keep paper copies anymore. I'll scan the documents and keep them if I really need it. But I'm not scanning, let's say, NSP bills or phone bills or things like that. Those, again, those documents, they're not irreplaceable because I can go out to a website and get them. Bank statements, if you're still getting paper bank statements, you can go out to the bank website and get it. So again, those don't have to be stored. But you also have things like media, so photos that you've taken, videos that you've taken. And I mentioned music, and music is if you have taken old albums or CDs and you've digitized them, that you want to back up. If you've just purchased songs or music from, let's say, Amazon or Apple, you don't have to back that up because you can always download that again from the site, and so it's already essentially backed up by the company. Most of these files should be in what's called a users directory. So if you go out to your C drive, there's a users directory, and within that users directory are subfolders for each person that has been set up on the computer. And so you're going to see like a C: users and then a username. And the username, if you have multiple people in the family that have been set up, you may have set up their individual names there. Otherwise, it may just say username if you didn't change it from the default there. And then last after username would be documents. This is probably the most important folder on the PC because this is where you should be saving your personal documents. Another one under that username directory is music. Again, if you have music, that's where it should go. Then there's a pictures directory. That's where your photos should go. Videos. That's where your videos should go. And then you may consider backing up other directories under this users. There are some called favorites. That's can be your bookmarks and things like that. Your desktop, if you want to back up the icons that you have and things like that, you could back that up. Or if you're doing syncing between your computer and cloud services, if you were using Google, you might have a OneDrive out there of the files that you're syncing between it and OneDrive. There's no need to back up. There's a download directory, and because you downloaded it, in most cases, you can always go back out there and download it again. So if a catastrophe happened or you had to get this PDF file or something like that, just go out and download it again. Another example is files that begin with a tilde. So tilde, asterisk dot asterisk. Those are temporary files that you'll see on some of these directories that there's no sense in backing up because you can't do anything with them anyway. Okay, what to back up? If you use services like Google or Microsoft or Apple online services, you are 99.9% safe doing no backup of that data because the service is already backing up your data and already has recovery services that will, in the event of a catastrophe or whatever, you'd be able to get back your files. So you don't have to worry about stuff that you store out on these different services. If you're really anal and you want to make sure that you've got some of this stuff backed up out on these services, so if you want that last 0.1% protection, all of these services have options where you can export the data that is up there back down to your PC. And as an example, I list Google. In Google, you can select which content you want to back up, like your mail, your calendar, your contacts, your Android devices, your Chrome settings and bookmarks, and Google Drive. And there's actually about 40 other services that you can download if you had to. We'll just take a quick look at that. I'm going to click on this link and we'll see through the miracle of modern science. We're taken to the Takeout. It's called Takeout at google.com. This is where you can select, and you can see it lists 49 different things that you can download. And you can go through this list and you could check which thing you wanted to download and then that would make a copy down on your PC. But again, most people are not going to need it. I just show it in case you do feel that you need it. Another thing is social networks. So if you have Facebook and Instagram or any of the social networks, almost all those have an option to download a copy. And again, most people don't need a copy, but if by chance you haven't been organizing your photos and you want to make sure that you've got all the photos that you've posted out to Instagram or that, you can go out to these different sites, and similar to the Google Takeout, you can download that information to your PC. A couple months ago we talked about password managers, and it's always a good idea to once you put all your passwords and are changing your passwords in the password manager, to back up that data occasionally. Maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, maybe once a year, whatever fits your plan. You can export the data and save a copy of those passwords locally on your hard drive, and then you'll be backing up your hard drive so you've got it in 3 different places, you're safe and secure, and everything's good. I mentioned software and drivers here. No need to back them up because it's always better to download the most current if you ever do need to recreate something on your computer or your device, reinstall. You can be going out to websites. You can get access to the most current software there. Same kind of holds true for downloaded purchases of media, whether that's music or video. There's no need to back it up because you can download it if you ever need to. So again, no need to back it up. I mentioned here that Windows has a built-in function that helps you prepare what's called, if there was a failure or a problem with Windows itself, restoring Windows back to a previous time, date and time. And that's a handy function. Windows will do that automatically. It creates restore points at key moments, such as when you install certain programs and drivers or apply some Windows updates. Windows is automatically creating these restore points. However, if you should manually create a point yourself on a regular basis. So you can do this if you want on a regular basis. You can go into Windows and you can create a restore point, whether that's monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever, you can do that. You should also do this if you're going to make major changes to your Windows or install a bunch of software that you want to make sure that you have a restore point. And before you attempt any type of major change, you can create a restore point. To create a restore point, if you go to the Windows taskbar and start typing in create restore point, let's go down here and see if we can do it right now. If I go down here, CREATE, create. You can see in the search, it came up with, in the control panel, there's a software called Create Restore Point. So if I click on this, it's going to bring us up a little window. This window will let us, if we were attempting to do a restore, we can click on this restore. We can pick the date and the time that we wanted to attempt to restore Windows to. But if we were going to make changes and want to create one, here's this option to create a restore point right now with the configuration that Windows currently has and listing the drivers that it currently has. And depending on how fast your machine is, it doesn't take long to create a restore point. So that can be that can be good to protect your machine there. Okay, well, let's continue with what to back up. Most Android phones and tablets are already set to back up. So if you look at your phone in the settings, system, advanced, you'll see an entry for backup. And if you have an Android phone, That's usually done to Google Drive. And I list an article here if you want some more details on it. But this is backing up your phone up to Google Drive. So if your phone was damaged or stolen and you bought a new phone, you'd be able to pretty much get it back into the working shape it was in with your data and that. I make a comment here that if you do lose your phone or do want to restore it, the clock is ticking as soon as it's no longer backing up. The old phone is no longer backing up. The data expires after 57 days that your device is not used. So you can't wait longer than 2 months there and then expect to restore. If you do lose the phone or the phone gets damaged, get your new phone and restore it as quick as you can. I mentioned here that if you have a Samsung Android phone, that has its own backup, and that only works with Samsung phones, but it's a little different than the standard Google one for most of the other Android phones. And just to list a little bit what it's backing up, so any of the photos or videos that are on your phone are getting backed up. Your text messages, your SMS text messages are getting backed up. Your call history, your device settings, your app settings and data, your contacts and calendars. So practically everything on your Android phone is getting backed up already, whether you know it or not, and which is a good thing there, but it is using up data up on your Google Drive, and we'll talk a little bit later about Google Drive there. I mentioned here for iPhones, similar type of feature is already built into the iPhone. You can go out to the website there. Your phone is getting backed up to the Windows iCloud, and so you do have the capability, again, if the phone is lost or stolen or damaged, to buy a new phone and pretty much restore it back to what it was before the catastrophe. Okay, where to back up. So we talked about what to back up and things like that. It wasn't that long ago that most of us were using CDs or DVDs to back up. Now I mentioned no, don't back up to those, because most of the newer PCs don't have a CD or DVD, so you don't want to be using media that is going to be hard to find a device that can read it. And if you do have any old backups from years ago that were on a CD or a DVD, if you do want to keep that data, convert it now to an external drive or a flash drive or something that can be used on the current machines, or up to a cloud drive. So there are a number of options, but get it off of the CDs and DVDs. Time to get rid of those. Flash drives, a USB flash drive, that can be a good option to back up, especially if you don't have that much data. If you have less than 256 gigabyte of data, they're very handy, they're very inexpensive, they're portable. A couple of drawbacks, though, is they can be lost because they are small. So if you're carrying it around, it can fall out of a bag. Somebody may steal it, or you may physically damage it. Let's say you sat on the drive and cracked the circuit board. You wouldn't be able to recover the data in there. So again, they can be used, but be cautious there. Most people I know for local storage use external drives, and you want to consider using 2 or more external drives, and you rotate them. Keep one at home and one off-site, like at work or in a fireproof safe. The drive should support USB 3 plugged into a USB 3 port, or use USB-C. The reason I mention that is frequently people don't know about their laptops or their desktops that all of those USB connections are not the same. Some of them are what are called USB 3, Some of them are USB 2. The USB 3 ports are 10 times faster in moving data than the USB 3. So when you're talking about backing up, especially large amounts of files or data or video files or that, you want it to go as fast as possible, and so you want it to be using USB 3 both on your computer, and if you're buying an external drive, making sure that it's USB 3 compatible. So just a little tip there. Another option nowadays is solid state drives. They're also called SSDs. They're faster than traditional hard drives, but it does cost more per gigabyte or terabyte. But that's a good option if you are looking to buy drives right now. Also, I mentioned here many Wi-Fi routers have a USB port, and that port can be used to plug in one of these external drives or even a flash drive, and then that drive can be connected to by all of the different devices that are in your home network. So you don't need, if you've got multiple family members with multiple laptops and that, you don't have to have a separate drive for all those laptops. You can usually put it on the router and then have the laptop connect to the router to back up files, and that makes it easier for your home devices. Okay, another option for backing up is if you have Amazon Prime, you have access to Amazon Photos free of charge. Prime members get free, full resolution, unlimited photo storage. So that's a good spot to be backing up your photos free of charge to the Amazon Photos. Unfortunately, it's just photos. If you have videos, you only get 5 gigabytes for videos there, which isn't that much. If you're not an Amazon Prime member, you can purchase space on Amazon Photos, 100 gigabytes for $24 or 1 terabyte for $84 a year. Another photo option is Adobe Lightroom, and we talked a little bit about this before in previous meetings, but Adobe has state-of-the-art photo editing tools, and if you buy a subscription, you get 1 terabyte of storage for $120 a year, in addition to access to Adobe Lightroom. And if you want to be even more professional, you can subscribe to the professional version for $240 a year, which gives you access to Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom Classic. So this is a good option for your photos to back up and keep originals and things like that. In the past, we recommended Google Photos, and that was always a good option because you had unlimited free storage, but that ended in June, roughly a year ago, in June 2021. Now if you upload photos there, it does count against your 15 gigabytes of free Google Drive space, but if you don't want to use any of these other services, Google Photos is a nice place to store your photographs. I mentioned YouTube video. This, you can put an unlimited number of videos up there, and so that can be your spot to back up and to share your videos. So regardless of whether you have Amazon Photos, Adobe Lightroom, or Google Photos, you consider putting your videos up on YouTube there. And you control exactly who can see them. You don't have to make them available to the world. You can control it to just yourself or just to your family and friends. So you do have complete control. Okay, another way to back up is cloud storage. And cloud storage, we've talked before about that, but we'll cover it a little bit here. One of the biggest concerns I hear from people about cloud storage is they are afraid if they put all their files up on the cloud, some hacker is going to hack in and get access to them. But the fact of the matter is the data as it goes up to the cloud is encrypted, which means that it's ones and zeros that nobody can do anything with unless they have your account and password. So as long as a hacker doesn't have your account and password, or as long as an employee at the company doesn't have your account and password, they cannot get at any of your data up in the cloud storage. So putting data up in the cloud storage is very secure, and the cloud systems are all encrypted. And there's never been a data breach at any of the cloud services where any hacker has gotten in and got access to files. It's only when people haven't changed passwords, or their password was involved in a data breach and somebody was able to log in to their cloud storage as this other person, then they got access to the pictures or data that you had up there. So the fact of the matter is, cloud data is much safer than storing your data locally for 99% of the people. So there's more instances if you have an external drive, somebody connecting to your local area network, or connecting to your computer, or getting a laptop, or things like that, you're much more likely to lose data, because none of these cloud storages have ever lost anyone's data, or the data being exposed. So what are some of the options? Well, I mentioned Google. Google Drive is an option. By default, you get 15 gigabytes of space up on Google Drive. That space is a combination of any Google Photos that you may have uploaded, any emails that you have, calendars that you have, contacts. So all of the Google services, if you're utilizing them, that uses some of your 15 gigabytes of space. If you need more space, then you upgrade to what's called Google One. And Google One, you can get 100 gigabytes of space for $20 a year, or 2 terabytes for $100 a year. Microsoft has a similar. If you created a Microsoft account, you get 5 gigabytes of free space. You can purchase 100 gigabytes for $24 a year. Or if you're a Microsoft Office user and you want the most current version of Office and you want some space up on the cloud, Microsoft has an offer of 1 terabyte for $69 a year, and that includes Office 365. So that can be a very good deal. The third option is Apple iCloud, 5 gigabytes free, 50 gigabytes for $12 a year, 2 terabytes for $120. And then probably the biggest company after the main three here is Dropbox. They have a similar type, 10 gigabytes for free, 2 terabytes for $120. So those are the main ones. There are other cloud services, but I'd stick with one of these. Another little tip though, personally, I do not pay for any cloud storage on any of these services, even though on many of these services I use more than what the free allows me. And the way that I do that is, let's say on Google. On Google, that's 15 gigabytes of free space per account. Well, there's no cost to create accounts. So I have multiple accounts on Google. And for each account, I get 15 gigabytes. So if I have 4 different email addresses, I have 60 gigabytes of free storage that I can put files up and put photos up there and different things. So that's one way to do it. And you can also do that on things like OneDrive and Apple iCloud also. So you can create multiple accounts, and each of those new accounts is going to get its own set of free space. So that's one way to do it. If you want more detail on cloud storage, you can see the January 2020 meeting. We talked more detail about that. Let's talk about types of backup. The first type of backup is what's called a system image. I don't recommend it because it creates a You need a lot of external storage because it's large and time consuming and takes a lot of time there. I recommend, though, that if you are concerned about your laptop or desktop crashing, which is different than we talked earlier about a restore point. Well, a restore point just means that if your computer isn't quite running the way that you wanted it to and you just installed some software, you might want to go back to a point in time when it was running better. That's the restore point. Well, the system recovery USB allows you, if there was a major catastrophe to your laptop or your desktop, you could put a flash drive in your computer, reinstall the whole Windows operating system, and be back up and running. And there's instructions on how to do this if you are interested in backing up your Windows, your entire Windows there. It's not like most people need to do it, but if you've ever had problems or wish that you could reinstall Windows or something like that and do things, this can be an option. Another type of backup, in addition to the system image, is what's called a full backup. And that takes all the data in all those designated drives and directories will be backed up. Every time the backup is run, all those files are backed up. Another option is what's called incremental. The incremental will take any new or modified data since the last backup of any type and copy those files. So if you did a full backup and then did an incremental the next day, it'd only be the files that changed in the last day. So that's what an incremental will do. Incrementals just take the stuff from the last time you did a backup of an incremental or a full backup. So let's say you did a full backup and then an incremental on Monday and an incremental on Tuesday and an incremental on Wednesday, and then your machine crashed for some reason. Well, to restore the files, you'd have to copy the files from the directory that were in the full backup and then the directory where you backed up those incrementals on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Differential, like the name applies, is a little bit different. It will take all of the files that were backed up from the last full backup, which means that if the scenario that we just talked about where we did a full backup on Sunday and then we did a differential backup on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, to get the machine back up and running, we'd copy those files from the full backup and the Wednesday differential, and we'd be all set to go. Whenever you're setting up a backup, the other probably most important setting is to figure out what kind of schedule is going to work for you. So there isn't one schedule that works for everybody. Again, depending on how much data you have, how important it is to you, that'll determine the schedule or schedules that you'll need. At a minimum, you should be backing up maybe at least once a month at the first of the month. You could do a full backup and do rotating external off-site drives. If you are creating other files that you'd hate to lose during the month, then maybe you're going to do a daily or weekly backup incremental. You can also have, if I was a business and I wanted to make sure that at any particular moment I was not losing data there, you could do incremental backups on a regular timed basis, like every 10 minutes or every hour, if you wanted to be super secure there with having a copy in case of failure. Okay, when you do the backup, I do not recommend a backup that uses a proprietary format or compressed files. You should be able to see and copy any file or directory on any device or operating system without special software. So that's my rule there. I used the package Coban Backup 11 for over 20 years. So I had been using it for the last 20 years, most of the 2000s there, until May of this year, May 2022. I used it because it was fast, free, no proprietary format, no ads, and the backups can be copied from any operating system or any device. The Coban, the owner of the software and the creator of the software, sold the rights to the software back in 2013 to another company. That other company since then has done nothing with the software. They haven't come out with new versions. They haven't sold the package or given any free upgrades or anything. So a number of people, including myself, since 2013, continued to use the software because it was simple software, it was effective, and the price was right. It was free. So very, very nice package, and probably a number of you are currently using Coban Backup 11. This is the great news. Great news. What was released back in April of this year was Coban Reflector version 1.0, and that's also available out on the Coban website, Coban Soft, and I converted to that. So the person who wrote Coban Backup, because he legally couldn't use the name and couldn't use the source code from the Coban Backup, kind of got fed up with the software company, created a new program called Coban Reflector, and he just released it this year. The nice thing about Coban Reflector is it looks and operates almost exactly as Coban Backup. And in fact, you can take your backups. So if you had been using Coban Backup and you define tasks to do your backups, which was defining those directories and the schedule and all the things like that, if you define that, you can take those tasks, you can export it, and you can import it into Coban Reflector, and you'll have your tasks and everything. It's very seamless there. So here I mention what I have in my backup, Coban Reflector task. Just a few things I'll mention there. I leave my computer on all the time, my desktop computer on all the time. So I schedule my backups to run daily at 1 a.m. in the morning. I do what's called an incremental. And the incremental, because of the way Coban works, it compares existing files to what's on the external hard drive. So when I swap out hard drives, it ends up being a full backup. That first day of the month, it ends up being a full backup of all files and all directories. And then the next day, I leave the external drive connected for that entire month. It's just going to back up those files that I changed or created in the last 24 hours. I don't use any encryption, password, or compression. Again, I want something that I can use on any computer without any special software, and that's what Coban gives me there. I include the directories that we talked about earlier, my photos, my videos, things like that. I exclude directories, the downloads directories, temp files, and I actually use a temp directory that I also have out there, so I make sure not to back up that. I use 4 external hard drives that I rotate the first of each month between a fireproof safe I have and my PC. In the past, I've rotated between them my home and work. At the first of the month, it usually takes between 2 and 4 hours to back up my files. I have roughly 15,000 files of 350 gigabyte. Most of my daily backups, so that first of the month, it does take it about 2 to 4 hours, depending on the speed of the hard drive, to back up that number of files. After that, the daily backup Usually takes less than 5 minutes to run because I'm not creating that many files, maybe 10 files on average at most. Some days there's nothing to back up because I haven't created anything new. Each month when I rotate the drives, I rename my backup directory. I put the date that the backup was last done on, and that way I have multiple full copies of my backups going back as far as 3 years on some of the different drives there. So I can go back if I had to and get a file on that. I manually delete old versions when space is needed because I'm not keeping every month. I'll maybe keep January of a year, and I'm able then to go back to January 5 years ago as an example. The previously mentioned online services all have sync and backup settings and software, and they work to sync your directories really good. When you are using a backup software, any software, be sure and check the backup logs to make sure that everything's running right and that you're not getting any errors. Test your backups. Make sure that you can restore and read from another computer or another device there. So don't just take it for granted that everything is being backed up. Occasionally look at your drives, copy files off, make sure that everything is good out there. I mentioned here that Windows 10 and Windows 11 do have a backup. So if you go to Settings, Backup File History, I don't recommend it, but it's designed to back up and restore data only on that device and in a proprietary format. So that's part of the reason I don't recommend it is, yeah, it works great for that single device, but if you wanted to take those files to another computer or that, it doesn't work for that. I recommend, well, here I say Coban Backup, but actually Coban Reflector is what I use because I can take that to any device and I can use any file manager program. I don't even have to use Coban to restore the files. Here I list some additional links and information. PC Magazine, what some of their recommendations are, and also this last article is if you're not sure the differences between backup and syncing files, this is a good article that explains that. Okay, I went on a little bit there. Let's take a look at the chat, and if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and show your video. So let me do this, and I am going to stop presenting here, and let me see if we can get to the chat there. Okay, I see Mike put the handout out there, which is good. And that's all I'm seeing in the chat. So if anyone does have any questions. I mean, Jim put it out there. You're not Mike there. In my mind, you're Mike there. Any questions or comments? And let me, here, I'll turn on you can turn on your video if you want and unmute yourself if you want to talk or that.
Hey Tom, this is John Stofko. I have a question about the chat. On this Microsoft Teams window, I don't see a place for chat at all. I have a thing for raising a hand, but there's no chat option that I see.
That's an interesting question. I was also having that problem too, and because it was occasionally I would see the chat and be able to look at it or put stuff in, and some of the meetings I was not able to see it. We have not determined why that is. Because you and I are guests, we're not part of 3M active employees, we're treated differently than employees. And Jim set up this Teams meeting as a 3M employee, so it has something to do with that. But bottom line, I'll get back to the bottom line, is that it sounds like you've installed Microsoft Teams on your computer. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So the way to get back the chat is when you click on the link, run it inside the browser and do not run it in your Microsoft Teams software on the computer.
Okay. Well, I did the use the program instead of using it in the browser. So next time I'll try that.
Yeah, and that's what I had done too, because usually you get a few more features and functions using the software and more controls and things like that. But in this case, that's where if I use the software, the chat was not enabled, or I wouldn't see it all the time. Sometimes I'd see it, sometimes I wouldn't. So now we're at the point whenever I connect to these meetings that where we're using a 3M account, I connect through the browser, and the browser, I guarantee you'll see the chat in there. And because Jim kept calling me crazy, saying the chat should be there, the chat should be there, and I'd go, no, it isn't. It's not on there. I can't click it. And that's where Jim would have to read the questions in the chat to me. But we found through a little trial and error that if I came in through the browser and not use the Teams software on the computer, that the chat always appears.
And that's funny because the Microsoft help on that topic says get them to use the desktop app instead of the browser, which is the exact opposite of your experience. So,
yeah.
Is that something that the organizer of the meeting may have to enable for guests? I don't know.
No, I joined from home as a guest. That's part of the I didn't really call Tom crazy. I would never do that. But when I joined from my home, so I look like an outside guest to it, I had the chat option. So it's like he said, it's a tough nut to crack. There are some other suggestions about settings you might try within Teams, etc., on Microsoft Help, but Tom's suggestion at least works. We know that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so at least that's what I'm using. I wished I could use the full version of Teams, but I can do most everything here and that fine. Okay. Looks like Dan asked the question, do you see any issues with backing up multiple PCs to a single Microsoft OneDrive account? No. As long as you have adequate space there, certainly you can do that. Because you can put stuff in directories, you can segment out your directories any way that you want. That would be the only thing that I'd recommend is kind of plan a little bit where you're going to put things and how you're going to put things. So if you just had one directory for photos and you put 3 different accounts of photos in there, if you ever did want to determine who had the photos initially, you'd never be able to do that with them all in one directory there. The only reason that you might want to have them under a separate account is if you wanted to utilize the 5 gigabytes of space and you had quite a number of files to back up, you might use multiple accounts just to keep it under the 5 gigabytes of space out there. Okay. Let's see. If you have multiple copies of your backups but don't encrypt them, isn't there a risk that if one of the copies on a hard drive is stolen, that person has access to your data? That's true. If you don't encrypt it, the encryption certainly adds a level of security. Now, I mentioned in my particular case, my backups, the 4 other copies are kept in a safe, so they'd have to get into my safe to get access to those. Also, it's a case of I do back up data to cloud storage, and that's already encrypted and out there. But if you do put it to a flash drive or to an external drive that isn't encrypted, if somebody does steal that flash drive or that external drive, and they would be able to copy or see the files that are out there. So yeah, there is a little bit of a risk there, but again, you can kind of mitigate it with how you do things. And if you really do want to encrypt it, go ahead. Just be aware that when you start doing things like that, that usually means that you have to load that same software, and certainly remember the key that you use to encrypt it to get the data back. And frequently I see people forget that or not have access to the software or attempt to use backups that they created years ago, and they don't remember what they used or stuff like that. So that's the main reason that personally I'm not encrypting and I'm not compressing. I don't have to use any special software or password to get at the files themselves. Okay, Jim says one additional suggestion from a user on the Microsoft forum has been to leave and then rejoin the Teams meeting. Yeah, I think if somebody finds that works, I'd like that feedback, because I think we tried that in the early days there. I shut down, and I think we were figuring out that maybe it was if a guest joined the meeting before the person who created the meeting joined, that you didn't have as many privileges. And we attempted to, or at least I did, I disconnected after Jim had connected and then connected back in, and I still couldn't see at that time the chat. So if somebody does find a solution, certainly let myself, and I'll put it in the e-bytes, and I'd love to be able to use the full version of the software, but right now I do use it through the browser. Okay, Jim says other users reported that does not always work. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because I think in the past we've seen sometimes the chat is there, but most of the time the chat wasn't there. So if every time I've gone through the browser, I have no problem at all. It's only when I don't go through the browser, and if I'm holding a Teams meeting with other people and I start the meeting, I use the software and I see the chat. So it's only attending a meeting, let's say, that Jim has set up, that the chat disappears on me. So I still have the Teams software on my computer. I just don't use it for these PC Club meetings here. Other questions or comments? I guess a general comment, hopefully everybody is backing up already, but if you aren't, the first step is to create a plan. And that plan, like I say, there isn't one plan that works for everybody, because it just depends on how critical your files are, how many files you have, and stuff like that. But certainly most of us nowadays have smartphones, you have photos. At a minimum, you want to make sure that you're backing up photos. Where you back up those photos, you may choose not to do any of that locally on your hard drive. You may choose to use Adobe or the Lightroom or the Amazon Photos or Google Photos. So you don't have to use external drives, and that's where I don't back up some of that stuff to my local drives either. I think the question earlier about the encryption too. The stuff that I'm backing up that isn't encrypted is, I guess I'd call it non-secure data. So there are different ways. I secure my confidential data already encrypted on my hard drive. So if the file on the hard drive is already encrypted and I use Coband Reflector to back up that file is encrypted on the local drive, and such that if somebody did get the local drive, they wouldn't be able to get into that file unless they had the key or the software and the password to get into the software. So there's different ways to protect, but it's good to think about these different scenarios or how to protect your data, and make sure that if something, not make sure, something is going to happen. You're going to delete files, you're going to think you're moving a directory when you're deleting it, you're going to be using a package and getting rid of stuff. So it's best to make a plan, have these backups, and it's going to make your life that much easier and better there. Any last questions or thoughts? Well, thank you for your time. Or I guess is there a way to encrypt only some of the files on your computer? Yes. If you do want to, some of the packages, if you're using packages, some of the packages will encrypt the data themselves. Otherwise, if the package doesn't encrypt the data, there's packages out there, freeware packages and that. Any of the zip files, so if you're familiar with the zip where it can take multiple files, those almost all those packages have the option to password protect, which will encrypt the file. And so the downside of outside of the package is you're going to have to go outside the package, encrypt it, and then next time you want to use it, unencrypt it, use it, and then encrypt it back. But it can be done, and especially if you're talking about, let's say, a password file, certainly that would be my recommendation, is to encrypt that so that nobody could accidentally get access to it and that. But so yeah, a zip program, any of the zip programs will let you do that. Okay. Beautiful day outside today. Hopefully everybody can get out there. MaxSig coming up this Friday, and we'll see you at the next Q&A or next general session next month. Thanks for joining.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.